Chapter 1. A Stagecoach in the Night. The year was 1865. President Lincoln had been assassinated, and the Civil War had ended in April. The war, which claimed the lives of over 620,000 soldiers on both sides, was over at last. On a dark and stormy night in the great north woods of New Hampshire, a stagecoach bound for Montreal battled its way along a road that the weather had turned into a sea of mud. The coach hit a pothole and overturned near the town of Whitefield. The driver directed the stranded passengers up a dirt track, telling them they would find shelter at a farmhouse about a half a mile away, home to Mr. and Mrs. William Dodge. The travelers were warmly welcomed by the Dodges, who offered them food and a place to sleep. The next morning, the guests were captivated by the breathtaking views of the Presidential Mountain Range, a glorious series of 4,000-foot peaks in the White Mountains. The crowning glory being Mount Washington, or Agikochuk, meaning home of the Great Spirit. Standing at 6,288 feet, making it the highest peak in the northeastern United States. Greatly impressed by the hospitality and incredible views, the travelers stayed a few more days with the family so that they could explore the area. Before continuing their journey to Montreal, the guests suggested the Dodges consider opening an inn. Mr. William Dodge was the second generation of his family to live in Whitefield. His parents, Mr. William Dodge Sr. and his wife Eunice Newell Dodge, moved to the area in 1823. They built the third house that was in town and opened Whitefield's first store. Mr. William Dodge Sr. was appointed as Whitefield's first postmaster when the mail facilities arrived around 1924, and he also held the positions of town clerk, town representative to the general court, and superintendent of schooling. Governor John Wentworth awarded a tract of land named Whitefields to Josiah Moody and 89 other petitioners on July 4, 1774, the eve of the American Revolution. This may have been the last township granted under the authority of King George III of England. Local historian Drew Merrill noted that Governor Wentworth was a royalist, and many of the townships that he granted were to petitioners who held commissions of the royal seal. The surrounding areas of Lancaster, Jefferson, Carroll, Bethlehem, and Dalton have already been established, and therefore the land granted to the Whitefield petitioners was essentially leftover land. The town was officially incorporated in 1804. It is unclear as to where the name Whitefields came from. One theory is that the area was named in remembrance of the Reverend George Whitefield, who was a famous Methodist preacher. He delivered sermons all over the East and has been called by some the most important religious figure of the 18th century. The Reverend, who had died 4 years earlier, had been a friend of Governor Wentworth. By the 1830s, Whitefield industries centered on lumber and wood products. Mills producing shingle and clapboard sprung up all along the banks of the Johns River that runs through the town. The Dodge family was also involved in this enterprise and owned a lumber mill. The remoteness of Whitefield was the industry's biggest problem. Whitefield had no railroad, which made transportation of mill products to the major cities a slow and hard process. Whitefield had a thriving agriculture community. In 1852, it was home to more sheep than people. With 1,250 sheep roaming the countryside, the town's 909 cows provided 2,000 pounds of cheese and 12 to 14 tons of butter per year. 5 years later, a mill making starch from potatoes had opened for business, with 2 others joining in by the end of the Civil War. William Dodge married a local girl, Mary Jane Eastman. The couple moved to a site recently cleared by Mary's father and built a simple log cabin. Despite the Civil War, the couple extended the cabin into a 4-room house and farm. It was this farmhouse which the stranded Montreal passengers visited.